Hello and welcome back to another 3D Rust tutorial. In this one I'll be showing you how to create a simple teleport function in Unreal Engine 5. In this example I'm just using it for a ladder, so if I walk to the bottom of the ladder and press E or any key you'd like, I teleport to the top, and if while I'm at the top I press the E key again, we teleport to the bottom. Now you can use these for portals, ladders, with whatever you wish. It just takes the character from one point location to another location and then set up the functionality to go back, and if I press the E key when I'm somewhere else it doesn't work. So let's get right into the tutorial. Okay, so I'm here in a blank project. I've decided to use the third person game template, but you could use whichever template you want. You could use the first person game template. You could be starting off with your own game that you've started to develop already. It doesn't matter, it'll all work. So what we're going to do to create this function is I'm going to create a separate blueprint actor to handle our teleportation. So I'm just going to add this into the content browser, but you might want to arrange it in a better folder structure. So I'm just going to right click and go to blueprint class, and I'm going to create an actor, and I'm just going to call it BP underscore teleport. So that is created, and I'm just going to double click to open it. So now we've got the viewport of our blueprint and we've got the components tab. So in the components tab I'm going to add a few things. I'm going to start with by adding a scene component, and this will come apparent in a moment why I'm doing that. But a scene component is just a component, but it's empty. It doesn't have a static object to it, it doesn't have a skeletal mesh, it doesn't have a spline. It's just a reference point for position, scale, rotation, etc. So I'm going to go add at the top and type in scene, and this is going to be our location 1, and I'm going to add another one and I'm going to call it location 2. And if that docks under the original one, as you can see this arrow here, if you have this arrow that means that location 2 is docked under location 1. So I'm just going to drag location 2 onto location 1. It says drop here to detach, so I want to detach it. Now they're two separate objects now. So what I want to add next is a collision volume, so when the player is inside of this volume then they're going to teleport to the other location. So when they're in this volume, that's when they can press the key to then teleport to the next location. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press add with our location 1 selected, and I'm just going to use a box collision. Now that's added in location 1, which is what we want. So in this box collision under the details tab, I'm going to scroll down all the way down to the collision tab. Now we don't want to overlap all, because then it would be a collision and you won't be able to get into this cube. So you'll never be able to get inside of the box to then press the key. So we obviously want to be inside of it and just tell the code that we are inside of it. We don't want it to block you from being inside. So I'm going to set collision to custom, and I'm just going to keep it on overlap here. All we really want for overlap is pawn, the rest could be ignore, but I'll just keep it on overlap. And you want to make sure it's query only, no physics collision. That way that we can enter this box and it doesn't affect the collision physically. So I'm just going to save that because we have that. And I'm going to press location 1 again, and I'm going to press add, and I'm going to add a skeletal mesh. Make sure that's under location 1, which it is. And under the mesh in the details tab, I'm just going to use Manny, which is the skeletal mesh of the mannequin. And that just gives us an idea of scale and position. So now with that, I'm going to just choose our box and I'm just going to scale it appropriately. I might just give it a, let's just say 100 by 100 by 100 in the box extent, and I'm just going to move it up a bit. Lovely. So now we have that one. I'm just going to copy these two and I'm going to paste it into location 2. Now that hasn't docked, so I'm just going to drop it in there. So now we have box and skeletal mesh in location 1 and box and skeletal mesh in location 2. And I'm just going to name them appropriately now. So let's just call box under location 1 trigger box underscore 01, and we call location in location 2, I'm just going to call it the same trigger box but 02. And the skeletal meshes, we don't really need to name it because we're not really doing anything with them. Those are just a reference point. So now going from here, we want to start creating the code for this. So I'm just going to go into the event graph here. And what we want to do is we want to let the code know when the player is inside of the box. So we'll select collision box 1, and I scroll all the way down in the details tab, and we have on component begin overlap. So that checks when a component is overlapping the trigger box, it'll send this message and play the code. So I want to do that, so I'm going to press add here. Now we'll do this for trigger box 2 later on as well, and I'll copy all that code over, but for now I'll just look at trigger box 1. So on component begin overlap trigger box 1, we want to check if it's the player that's overlapping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and get player character, and we got this node here. I'm going to drag this off, and I'm going to type in cast to, and then because I've got the third person template, I'm using the third person character, so I'm going to type in third person character, and we can cast there. You can also just do equals off here, I believe, but normally I do cast because I want to do other functions as well. So we'll clean up the code later, but I'll just leave it as that because that's what I normally do personally. So I'm just walking you through what I would do, but we will clear this up in a moment. So other actor, so our character isn't a component, it's a whole actor on its own. A component is these individual pieces like a skeletal mesh. Well, there's a skeletal mesh within our character, but the character itself is not just a component, it is an actor. So we're going to get other actor, so the actor that's in this trigger box, and we're going to type in equals equals, so we're going to get the equal node. So if our other actor is equal to our third person character, if it is, then we want to run the code because we know it's the character that's entered the box. So I'm just going to add a branch, so I'm going to hold down B and left click, and that'll add a branch. And I'll connect this pin up and connect the condition up. So once something's overlapped the box and it is the character, what we're going to do is I'm going to create a variable just so we can hold the player variable. So if I press plus and I type in player, I'm just going to call it player ref for player reference. And if we do that, or what you could do is you can drag off here and you can promote that to a variable. So that's obviously a lot easier, just to make sure you get the right thing. So I'm just going to call this player ref variable. I'm just going to delete that other one I made because it's much easier to drag off there and press promote to variable. So what that's going to do is just going to save our reference to the character so we don't have to keep casting to it. So now that we have that, we want to say that we're in a box. So we want to let the system know that we're in this box. So we want to create a variable again, and this is going to be a boolean, so a true or false. And we're just going to call it in box 1 question mark. So when the player is inside this box 1, we want to set this variable to true. That way we can call on it later to check if it's true. So I'm just going to left click and drag this in and press set. So once we enter that zone, I'm going to set this variable to true. So we are in box 1 now. And inversely, I'm going to select trigger box 01 again, and I'm going to scroll all the way down. and on component end overlap, so when we exit. So this time I'm just going to get our player variable. I'm going to hold left click and drag that in, and I'm going to get it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if our other actor, so the actor that left it, is equal to our player variable. And this just makes it a lot neater than what we had up here, because we've already got the reference set here. And I'm going to hold B and left click to get a branch. I'm going to check if it was the player variable. If it was, in box 1, we're going to set that to false, because we're no longer in box 1. And I'm just going to compile and save that. So now I'm just going to do this for trigger box 2. So select it, scroll down, make sure that we set up this correctly, and on component begin overlap, and I'm just going to add the on component end overlap too. So I'm just going to copy all of this code apart from the inbox 1. So I was left click drag selecting here, and go Control C and Control V to paste it, and then I'm just going to connect that up and going to connect this up to the other actor. And then I'm going to do the same for the bottom, copy all that other than our inbox 1, connect the other actor for the equals, and then I'm going to create a new variable plus here in box 2 question mark, and I'm just going to set that to false when we exit and set that to true when we enter that box. And I'm just going to compile and save again. So now we've got this set up. So basically when we enter the box, we're letting the system know that we're in the box, and we're keeping that value to reference later on when we press whatever key we want to trigger. And we're doing that for each box. And we're setting this variable just so we know which box we're inside of, because we don't want to teleport to box 2 if we're in box 2, and we don't want to teleport to box 1 if we're in box 1. We want to teleport to the opposite. So we'll want to check that later on. So now we've got that set up, we want to be able to press whatever key we would like to teleport. And you can set this up so it'll just teleport as soon as you get in the box, and I will show you how to do that later. But for now, I will show you how to do it when we press a key. So to tackle this, I'm going to use a interface to talk to the player character. So we don't set up the E key, F key, whatever key we're pressing in here. You do that in the player character. So we need to send a message from the player character to this blueprint to let it know that we've pressed that key. So I'm just going to save that, and I'm going to find our player character. So I'm just going to go and type in third person, and there's our BP underscore third person character. So you do this if you had the first person character, you just open the same thing up. And now we've got our third person character blueprint. So this is where we say what key we want to press to teleport. So I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to just type in E key, and I'm going to scroll until I see the keyboard icons here, and I'm going to scroll down to E, and I'm going to press that. So when we press E, we want to teleport using this function. So to do that, I need to use an interact interface. So you might already have interfaces set up. If you do not, I'll create a new one for the purpose of the teleportation. So I'm going to right click, and I believe it's in blueprint and blueprint interface. So I'm going to call it BPI for blueprint interface underscore interact. You can call it whatever you would like. I'm just going to open that up. So this will call a function. A function is just basically a chunk of code. And I'm just going to call that function teleport key pressed function. can call it something shorter, but that's what I want to call it. And I'm just going to give that a capital T. So teleport key pressed function. I'm just going to compile and save that. So now in our third person, first person, whichever character you have, I'm going to go to the class settings and I'm going to go to implemented interfaces and I'm going to add that interface we just created. So I'm going to type in BPI_interact and you can see it there. I'm just going to add that to our character. I'm going to compile and I'm going to save. And what that does is under the interface tab here, we now have teleport key pressed function. So you can just drag this in, or you double click it, sorry, and when the message gets sent to play this, then it'll play whatever on the end of this. So we're going to do that in the teleport. What we want to do is call this to play. So I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to right click and type in the function name. So in my case, teleport key pressed function. And I'm going to call the function. Teleport key pressed under the BPI interact interface. And I'm just going to hook that up. I'm going to compile and save that. Now what we want to do is set up that interface in our teleport blueprint. So I'm going to go do the same under our BP teleport, class settings, implement interfaces. I'm going to type in our BPI interact interface and I'm going to add that. And I'm going to compile and save. Now under our interface tab, if I double click this, I'll create a new function node where we can run our code. So now we can just print string just to check if it works, and we're just going to call it key pressed. So now when we press the E key, it'll say do the teleport function, and with that teleport function it'll come here and that function will do a print string of key pressed. So now we can test things. Unfortunately this won't work, but just to prove it, I press play, and if we press E, we don't have any message popping up in the top left corner like we should. Now that's because we need to know what object to send this message to, this teleport key pressed function. So there's a few different ways you can do this. I like to set it up the same way I would use to pick up an object. If I'm making a game where you can pick up things, that way you can use the same key and the same functions of checking what actors you're overlapping. That way we can just reuse things easier. So I'm going to show you that way that I like to do. So if you right click and type in sphere overlap actors, so what this will do is it'll spawn a sphere at a certain location and it'll output a list of actors that that sphere is overlapping. So when we press E, we create a sphere to check overlapping actors. So for that position of the sphere, I want to set it to the location of our character. So if I type in self, get reference to self, so this is all in the third person character template, or first person if you're using first person template. So I'm just going to get reference to self, and I'm going to get see if we get get world location of, let's just say, the capsule component. That's the center of our character, and we just plug that into the sphere position. Now in our list of actors, we don't want to get the third person character because that is us. So we just want to ignore ourselves. So as we can see, this box means it's an array, this circle means that it's one specific item. So what I need to do is I need to type in make array. An array is just a list of individual items. So we're going to just add ourself to that list of items and then output that list to the actor list to ignore. And then under object type we can filter it by certain object types. So I'm going to just pull this out and again I'm going to make array. And what this shows us is the different collision presets that we can have. So normally I create a separate interact preset for interactables, but you can just keep the default list. So I'll keep the default list now to make it easier, but if you want more in-depth for this, I will try and add a video on the top right explaining how to set up different interactable collisions to optimize it and get some more customized results. But yeah, let's just keep it at this for now. So if we go to teleport and we check out our trigger box and we scroll down to collision, we have the object type here. Currently it's set to world dynamic, so we can just keep it on world dynamic. So what we do, get a list of object type world dynamic because that's what it is. And then we want to get those actors. So next we probably want to do a for each loop. So right click and type in for each loop and connect that up and connect our out actors to the array. So for every object it's going to loop this code here over and over again for each object that we've got in the list. And then for the array element we want to set that up to our teleport key pressed function, because the object that we overlap, we want to try and send this message to that object that we've overlapped. So we can do that, teleport key pressed function message. Sorry, I should have said that earlier. We want the message version because we're sending the message over to it. So if you just pull out this array element and type in the name of your function you created in the BPI interact, and then if you compile and save. So when we press the E key, spawn a sphere and check all of the objects that are world dynamic that are inside the sphere, that are colliding with the sphere, and get a list of that. And for each item in that list we want to try and send the teleport key pressed function to it. Obviously other objects that don't have this function are not going to play this function because there's no function to play. So that is that, and I'm just going to set our sphere radius to 150, something like that, and I'm going to compile and save. So now if we go to third person map and press play, if I press E we don't get anything again, and that's because I haven't brought our BP teleport class into the world. So I'm just going to drag that into the world right now, and as you can see if we go into that box we're now colliding with it, and when we press E it now says key pressed in the top left. That's because we're spawning that sphere and we are colliding with it. So I'm just going to get a quick visualizer up just to show you what's happening. So what I've just done there really quickly off camera is I've set up a draw debug sphere with all of the same values, so that will show us the sphere that we are putting into the world. So it's very faint there, but if you can see it coming up, so anything in that sphere it's going to detect the overlap. So with that out of the way, just make it green, just for those who couldn't see. If I press E, you can see it flashing up there. So now that works, we're going to go back to our blueprint teleport, and now we want a teleport. We can make a message, but we don't want that, we want a teleport. So to do that, we are going to start off with by getting our character again. Well, I suppose we don't need to do that straight away. So if I do a branch, so hold B and left click. So when we play it, I'm going to check if we're inside of box 1 for example. So in box 1 question mark, the boolean we set up earlier, if we are in box 1, we want to teleport to box 1. If we're not in box 1, we want to see if we're in box 2. Sorry, if we are in box 1, we want to teleport to box 2. If we are not in box 1, we want to see if we're in box 2. If we are in box 2, we want to teleport to box 1. So to do this, we just want to drag off here. So when we are inside of box 1, we want to set the location of our actor. So to do that, I'm going to right click and I'm going to type in set actor transform. So when true, set actor transform. So the actor that we're going to transform is our player. So we created a variable from this earlier, so we don't have to get the player character. It just makes everything neater. We have that here. And when we are in box 1, we want to teleport to box 2. So to do that, we're going to get location 2. The reason I'm getting location 2 is because, well, you can get location 2 or you can get the box, or you can get the location of the skeletal mesh. So I'm going to just do location 2 for now. I'll show you why this might matter in a moment. But if we drag in location 2, so just location 2, just straight drag, left click, drag that in. And what we want to do is off this pin, get world transform. Get world transform under the transformation. And what we want to do is we don't want to get the scale of location, because if somebody scales this up, we don't want to be scaling the player. We want to keep the player scale consistent. So I'm just going to right click the return value and split struct pin. And I'm going to do the same on set actor transform. And that way we just set the location the same and the rotation, but we're going to keep the scale as 1 for the player. And I'm going to check teleport. What this does is it teleports the player there rather than moves the player there. But you can read what it does on this hot tooltip anyway. But yeah, with that done, I'm going to just copy this. So I'm going to just move this closer so everything's in one section, and just Control C, Control V down here. So now we're going to see, are we in box 2? And because we called this function, we must be in box 2, but for the sake of things, we want to check it, just to be sure. So if we're not in box 1, see if we're in box 2. If we are in box 2, we want to set the player variable, the player location to location 1. And keep that transform, and compile and save that. So now we can test this out. So if I go into our level, now our boxes are in the same location. So of course we don't want that because we won't teleport anywhere. To solve this, I'm just going to go into the details panel, and under this section where we can see all of our components, I'm going to select location 2. And I'm just going to move location 2 over here. And also in the blueprint, I'm just going to select both our skeletal meshes. And I'm just going to type in, we want them visible for now so we know where the markers are, but I'm just going to make sure they have no collision. And they do. So now if I press play, if I go into trigger box 1 and press E, I'm now in this location. If I press E while I'm in this location, we should go to trigger box 1, but it's not, so we've made a mistake somewhere. So if I go back in the event graph, what have we messed up? Trigger box 2, trigger box 1. So there, I've made an issue here. So when we leave trigger box 1, we want to set in box 1 to false because we're no longer in box 1. And it is correct for that one. So I'm just going to compile and save again now and press play. Go into box 1 and press E, I end up in box 2. When I'm in box 2 and press E, I end up to box 1. If I press E outside of there, nothing happens. But press E in the box, and I teleport between the two of them. I appreciate this was a long one, but I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. It is free. And if you want to create a teleport function where you simply just walk into a trigger box rather than having to press a button, you can check out the tutorial. I'm going to link at the end of the video. Check out the Gumroad link in the description so you can see the code and check them out, and other bits and pieces I'm going to publish there, one of which being an advanced teleporter pack. This is a project you can acquire that has many more features than what we went over here today, as well as some fantastic customization that is easy to implement using variables I've exposed on the blueprint. It also features a picker where you can pick which teleporter you want to teleport to, allowing for limitless possibilities and making it way more flexible than the method we've used today. Check it out with my Gumroad link in the description, or watch the overview video also linked below. Anyway, I hope this video or some of the resources I provided help you on your game dev journey. If you find any of them helpful, do give this video a like, check out my Gumroad page and consider subscribing for more helpful resources. Thank you.